We're live.
Hey, greetings everyone. Good evening. I hope everyone's good. I actually can't see who has logged into this. Let me check my other laptop. I hope there's quite a few people that have logged in. I hope everyone's doing all right. We've got some fantastic panelists with us today. And as you know, that the conversation is about environmental sustainability and systemic racism. We've all come together basically to illustrate a better way to trade, do better business, to be examples of good citizens for this world. And each one of us are touching upon this subject from very different angles. We're a very diverse group of people here today. And not just white or black, we're coming from very different career trajectories. You'll hear from climate activists, you'll hear from ethical designers, you'll hear from community enablers, and people who are supporting vulnerable people, underrepresented communities within our communities. And so we're going to start off with some introductions. Some of you already know, my name is Valerie. I started off with a ethical fashion brand called Kitty Ferreira. Oh, we've got 10 people. Yay. Started off with an ethical fashion brand called Kitty Ferreira. You can go onto my website, kittyferreira.co.uk, and read the about page on the reasons why I set that up. The issue that I have with the ethical fashion arena is that we're not really touching upon, the real issues as to why there needs to be an ethical fashion sector in the first place. So it's all very well, and kudos to the brands that are, setting up ethical production processes, green production processes, looking after people and planet. But we're not really touching upon the reasons why this needs to be done in the first place. And it's all built upon a system of systemic racism. So when we look at the historical context of imperialism, colonialism, and what we have today is a capitalist structure in which we're all living under. And so I felt it very necessary to bring these panelists together because we are all kind of resolving this issue in our own little way. And hopefully we can inspire others to do the same. So I'm going to come off the mic now, hand it over to Ellie. And Ellie, if you can explain who you are and what you do.
Hi everyone, my name is Eloise Ravindranath. Most people know me as Ellie. I am here representing my vegan food guru business, which promotes plant-based food. I do cooking workshops for vulnerable people within the community, but I also promote permaculture, which is the eco-sustainability of growing and living off your own produce. You can find me on Instagram on vegan.food.guru, and please subscribe to my mailing list. So I'd like to pass it over to someone else to introduce.
Thanks very much, Ellie. Ella, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, my name's Ella, and I am from the Lewisham local group of Extinction Rebellion. So we're a protest movement that is trying to stop catastrophic climate change and social collapse, basically. Launched in the UK about 2 years ago now, and spread internationally, but we organise on regional and local levels as well. So I'm from the Lewisham local group.
Amazing. And Callum, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, my name's Callum. I run a discussion group for the diaspora, so the Black community specifically. We sort of discuss everything. I always say it's almost like a therapy because we don't really get many exclusively Black spaces where we can speak about the things that we're going through, our experiences and our history. It's a sister project of a leadership program for young Black children called Ubuntu, which has been running for 12 years now. It's every Wednesday. And, you know, if you've got any questions or anything, then feel free to, they can leave notes and stuff, right? You can message and, okay, so
yes,
yeah,
they
feel
can.
free to leave a note, and then I'll give as much information as possible. Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah,
www.ubuntuslm.org.uk, I think it is. Sorry, I'm done.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you. Yes, good point. If anyone does have any questions or comments, please drop them in the comment box and we'll attend to them throughout this discussion. Nicholas.
Hey, my name's Nicholas. I live in Southwark, work in Southwark, deliver in Southwark. I run a number of projects from, well, mainly community projects, looking at how we can build sustainability and legacy in our community. I've set up a number of projects. Some are still running, some are not. I've got a Fix Your Bike project also, which I run currently every Saturday. I've also helped another organisation set one up in Brixton. I'm also the founder of the Livesey Exchange on the Old Kent Road, which hopefully is about to be built next year. And I'm also the founder of Pempeople, which stands for People Empowering People. I run a number of pop-up shops in Peckham. We're currently operating out of 60 garages, which has become the Livesey Exchange on the Old Kent Road. And I think really, I think for me, I think it's really about how we get local people to kind of take charge of what needs to be done in their own communities. They are quite capable of doing it. I think sometimes it's just a bureaucratic hurdle that actually stops people from, you know, navigating those obstacles that lay ahead really.
Amazing. And actually, I want to touch upon that subject of potential hurdles that we are facing, particularly within the Black community, accessing finance or being able to put projects together. How have you found putting your project together?
So I laugh. It's been tough. You know, I'm a kind of bullish guy. I just kind of normally just go in on a normal basis. Like, yeah, it can be done. But I think, you know, the challenges that I've faced is, you know, actually understanding the process, the policies. Also, I think my projects, it's a bit unique because it's not, you know, we didn't go out and we didn't, you know, go looking for private investors to deliver the project. Luckily enough, we were able to get money off Southwark Council and also the mayor's office. Also, that those come with their own strings as well. And also kind of going through a process that I'm not really used to. So I've never put up a building. I've never understood the whole architectural prospect of it as well. And then there's all the other hurdles, you know, how much money have you raised, meetings, policies, planning, building control, you know, how much money do you have to, you know, to kind of go forward. Also, you know, you also got to sit and work out, you know, everybody's agenda in terms of who wants to do what and who gets to do what, if that kind of makes sense. You know, so I think, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think, you know, when you know, I could go into, you know, I could get the money from investors and it could be just as fruitful, if that kind of makes sense. I think for me, you know, how I kind of started was actually reading Southwark Council's policies and saying, you want to do this, we can do X, Y, and Z. And how do we then align it? But I think one of the biggest issues that I found is that at times, many departments don't actually talk to themselves. So it actually makes it quite difficult. And again, because I don't work for the council, you know, I don't have that easy route of navigation to actually get through. So I think even though people might see me smiling on Instagram and Facebook and everything else, sometimes it's not all about smiles at the end of the day, if that kind of makes sense. You know,
yes,
it has its good moments and it has its bad moments as well. You know, but I think for me, it's really about how we get to the end goal, you know, how we get to the end goal and how we also show people, yeah, it is possible, You know, it's not going to be an easy task. I think what most people don't realize, I've been doing this for the last, I would probably say that the idea really came back 2006 and then kind of really kicked off in 2015 when we actually got the actual garages on Old Kent Road. But then you got to sit and think about the number of documents that we had to sit and write and hand in and get rejected and hand in and reject and I'm not going to tell a lie. You know, it was literally going back and forth, you know, and getting rejection and being told no. And I think I would say lucky enough, you know, I was able to persuade, you know, one of our councillors who was a cabinet member in Southwark, you know, who was also my local councillor, that we actually needed this in the area and actually identified that need.
Okay. And we do have a comment in the King's Room, from the King's Room. I doubt we can truly express the obstacles in one session. I think I know what you're referring to. I mean, Ellie, have you yourself found any obstacles in doing what you do?
Definitely. I think particularly because I've got actually no background in permaculture. I just have a passion for nature. I also have a passion for plant-based food. So I've actually had to navigate myself to establishments that have already been set up and have an infrastructure, such as the May Garden Project, which is located in Mitcham. The founder is Ian. He's been doing this work for a long time, I think well over 10 years. And just having been part of that organization, I've been able to observe that a lot of doors are getting closed, despite the good work, but despite the communities that are being engaged, despite the results and the targets that are being achieved for young people engaging in permaculture and being interacted with and stimulated with. These young groups of people who are on the fringes of the community have definitely had their lives been turned around through the support of initiatives like the May Garden Project. However, there's still, like Nicola said, a lot of bureaucracy coming from local governments, funders, corporate organisations. Things are always ring fenced, and there's always red tape that you have to kind of, like Nicola said, navigate yourself. And it's a way you educate yourself as you're going through it. So I think a lot of that is because of lack of education, but then there's a large part of it that is, like you said, systemic racism.
And do you think more people from our community in particular would be, as I learned the other day, that we can grow our own food, such as Scotch bonnet, in the UK? If more people knew about that being an opportunity and actually being a thing that can be achieved, do you think more people from our community would enter your industry?
I think it's largely been, from my experience on the allotments that I've engaged with and the community garden spaces, but predominantly allotments, I'd say, there is a massive African and Caribbean.
Sorry, can I just hold you there, Ellie? Is anyone else having difficulty hearing her, or is it just me?
I can hear you quite well, but you know.
I can hear it's a bit quiet, but I can hear. Yeah,
there you go, a bit closer. I don't know.
Yeah, do you want to get a little bit closer? I'm going to put these headphones in as well.
You tell me when I.
Okay, go for it. Okay. Yeah, so that's much better.
So in my experience of attending and engaging in allotments, I have found there is a large, predominantly African and Caribbean presence who own allotments. However, they are 50 and above. So it would be senior citizens who are planting our callaloo, our pumpkins, our Scotch bonnets, our thyme, our tomatoes, green beans, sweet potatoes. You know, it's there. It's just the generation gap hasn't filtered through. So people who are in their teenage years and their 20s, their 30s, like myself, you know, that age group is missing. And I think the more we engage our young people, maybe through, so I've, like I said, been affiliated with the May Garden Project. I've also done a lot of work with the Lioness Circle, which is a women's group, largely African and Caribbean community based. And I think it's about engaging more of our community to make these resources available and accessible, so that we are responsible for bridging that gap, because it's there, and our elders have already been exhausting this since Windrush Day, because it's part of it's inherently part of our culture to grow our own food.
You were cutting in and out, but I think I got the general gist of what you're saying. I think that it's a bit of having a balance between having role models, people who look like yourself, myself, and having that education out there to tell people, you know, you can grow your sweet potatoes. James Ross Hunter Youth Support has just said that pumpkin we can grow in our own backyards. We did this year, absolutely. I know that pumpkin is in abundance. Obviously, it's Halloween. Scotch bonnet, you know, amazing. Had I known from maybe when I was a teenager that you could grow Scotch bonnet in this country, I would have jumped on, you know, an allotment long time ago. Who knows? But it is a balance of seeing people who look like yourself in this field as a form of inspiration for the younger generation. So I wanted to also touch upon our previous conversation that we had about having a Black-led city farm, you know, this kind of thing, where we can educate young people on producing produce. And I know that, Ella, you've also got within XR Lewisham a sustainable project going to do with sustainably grown food for the community, self-sufficient food processes.
So the project that I'm involved in, actually, I'm speaking on behalf of XR Lewisham today, but it's not actually part of XR. So we're calling ourselves Lewisham Urban Farms. And the idea is that we are going to have one kind of central hub for growing food in Lewisham. We're going to use it as like a learning space, and then we're going to support people from other communities to set up their own growing spaces, and we're applying for funding to do this at the moment. And the idea is kind of a lot of the points that have been raised already, in as much as taking growing back into your own hands, knowing the supply chain from start to finish, because it's yourself, right? And you don't have any of the plastic pollution, you don't have any of the air miles, and you know, hopefully, like, the idea is that we do it for the people that need it the most. So in terms of people that come to us who need support, like we've had advice that people will come to you and they won't actually need your support at all. So you've kind of got to be a bit skeptical and be like, are you perfectly, so that's the idea at the moment. We're in our early stages, but it sounds like Ellie would be an amazing person to be in touch with. Sounds like you have so much of the expertise that we really need.
I wouldn't call myself an expert. I would just say I'm an enthusiast.
I mean, that, like, awesome. Enthusiast, expert sounds pretty expert to me. Yeah.
Thank you.
And just following on from what you were just saying, you know, if we are really addressing this whole systemic racism issue, and enabling young people to really, you know, see themselves as following through these footsteps, you know, taking on you know, sustainable agricultural roles. I mean, we've got a comment, the King's Room, who has said a lot of young people do not want to engage with agriculture. How would you suggest engaging young people to grow their own food? I think that's quite a wide question, absolutely. But let's bring it right back to our community. That is the Afro diaspora, or African Afro-Caribbean community. I know that you guys are also on the front lines, as it were, Black Lives Matter marches. You have a very, what I call, robust system in teaching people who look like yourselves what racism looks like. What is it that you guys do?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think before we go into anything that XR does, I think it's really important to outline that there have been like big failings on the part of XR to be inclusive from the get-go, really. And I mean, I just wanted to thank you, Valerie, for inviting us to speak on this panel, because yeah, it's a really amazing opportunity to listen to you guys and learn from you guys, and make new connections going forwards. But yeah, I think, like, as I said from the get-go, I think there wasn't enough sort of recognition within XR that we need it to be representative. Like, we need that input from a diverse community, like whether it's people of color or the working class or other marginalized groups. I think that lack of input from the get-go really had sort of an impact on like our strategy. So we kind of, so I don't know how much you guys know about XR, but we have used civil disobedience to sort of push climate change up the public agenda. So basically breaking the law on purpose to get attention. But that's something that in itself is very exclusionary. You know, it's so much more dangerous for a person of color to break the law and set out to get arrested than it is for a white middle class person. And I think that's something there wasn't enough knowledge of from the beginning, and that's because we didn't have the representation there, you know. And I mean, it's kind of linked, but also in terms of our relationship with the police, you know, I don't think there was enough understanding of the fact that the police are institutionally racist. You know, they kill black people, they kill disabled people. Like, I've been at marches before where people have said, like, we love you to the police. And there's been like young men of color there who've been like, okay, we're here, we're engaging, but I'm not going to chant that. Like, this isn't for me, you know? So yeah, before saying anything about anything good XR is doing, I feel like I just want to caveat it with a bit of context that we're far from perfect, and we're still learning, and really appreciate this opportunity to learn, basically. I feel like I've just said a lot there, so I'd be interested to hear other people's opinions.
We are all on this path of learning, and we're all on this path of discovering what each other's kind of doing in terms of being able to collaborate, in the sense that you don't want to reinvent the wheel. You know, it's about having a collaboration, a skill set that, for example, you've identified Ellen has the skill set that you're looking for, and the two of you can collaborate at a later stage. But I think, as I mentioned earlier, or touched upon earlier, is that collectively, I think everyone in this panel is touching upon how we can illustrate a better future, whether it's for young people, whether it's sustainable food growing or self-sustaining health, and how we support the community. So Callum, I'm coming to you. How did you find you and your group of people, shall we say? How did you guys find the Black Lives Matter marches?
So I think, in what respect? I mean, I think everyone knows about what happened at Trafalgar Square when you had sort of the far right coming up there. And making threats to the people that came for the march, the peaceful march. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that
I
is
think I'm the only one who can't hear you very well.
No? I'll try and speak a bit louder. I think that illustrates best how I feel about the Black Lives Matter movement. You know, this is not to speak ill of everyone, because everyone's trying their best. But it's very confusing to me, because you've got about 3-4 Black Lives Matter pages in the UK alone, all with over 100,000 followers. And when those marches at Trafalgar Square came, one said, let's go, and the other said, don't. So what it done, it put people in danger. and you had people being attacked because we wasn't in numbers. So it's difficult, you know, when you're galvanizing the people, you know, there has to be some kind of continuity. And I didn't think that was there. I do think that it's a start. You know, it's a massive movement right now, but I think that we need to be careful not to have a savior's complex. We tend to think someone's coming to save us, so we don't do it ourselves. We're gonna die and go to heaven, so yeah, don't worry about now. You can do it right now. You know, we don't need to have a savior. You know, Black Lives Matter has become the people's champion, and you know, we've kind of sat back and said, you know, we're rooting for them, which is fantastic. But it doesn't mean that we should sort of sit back and stop what we're doing. The fight doesn't stop, and it's with every single individual that's for that fight.
Yes, I agree with part of what you say, actually. I think we as a community have been, you know, the power has been taken out of our hands. We know that on one hand. And then we are examples in this group alone that we are putting ourselves forward as powerfully led people. Power being the description, sorry, what's the word I'm looking for? Power, the real definition of power is being effective. It's not the bravado, the, you know, it's
of course,
the ability to be right, the ability to be effective, and we're all illustrating that in this group. So
yeah, I mean, you know, if I could, yeah, you know, this fight is a dangerous fight. You know, I've been in this as long as I remember, and our organization is connected with most of the organizations that are fighting it up and down the country and in Europe. It's dangerous. It's not like pretty. It's not always pretty and smiles. It is a dangerous fight. You know, there's some people that do not like what you're doing, officials and non-officials. It is dangerous. And I think one reservation that a lot of people have with Black Lives Matter is they haven't identified themselves. You know, I think there was someone who what's the word? They brought out the name Black Lives Matter to put on a T-shirt or something, and I thought, you lot have just raised £70,000. You can't tell me that's not registered. That's scary, you know. And that's not knocking them or anything, because we all make mistakes. But I think that's people's reservation. And in terms of power, going back to sort of growing our own food, you know, we live in a capitalist society. You know, for capitalism to exist, people have to buy things. They can't be self-efficient. If people are efficient, capitalism collapses. You know, so it's gonna be difficult to get all the children involved. Because we live in London and there's a lot of high rises. No one's got a garden, so traveling to go and do it is an issue. And number two, like I said, I mean, if they become self-efficient, capitalism starts to crumble. So I mean, Francis Cress-Welsing said, if you don't understand racism, nothing you understand properly. Racism impacts absolutely every single thing we understand in the world today. It's entwined with capitalism, and if we don't understand racism, we don't understand the rest of it. So that's sort of how they marry up.
Yes,
can I
from our
interject?
Go on, Ellie.
I just have to say this, Callum, because I agree with everything you said. However, there's a woman on Instagram called Farmer. We can actually grow tomatoes and a variety of different herbs and vegetables from our windowsills, from our blocks.
That's true.
From our community garden spaces, and we don't need to be owners of allotment. We can share spaces. So there are ways to do it. And I just had to say that, but I agree with everything else.
No, thanks, Ellie. You know what? This is why we need you, because, you know, you offset some of the things that people will say about not being able to do things. You educate us. You know, when I think of it, I think, I've got a garden now, I didn't before. Or actually, no, I had a windowsill before. You know, I could have easily done it. It's not difficult. So thank you very much, actually.
You guys were breaking up for me just then. Does anyone have any questions?
I I think for me, you know, and I totally agree with what Callum and Elias said. I think, you know, looking from where I am, I think we need to start getting our young people to actually appreciate, you know, they might call it organic food, you know, but that's what we all eat all day, every day, you know, in normal circumstances. And the fact is, I think because we've made, you know, food so cheap, it's easy just to go out and, you know, buy cheap food. What we need to do is actually teach our young people the value of the nutrients, you know, like the callaloo, you know, whether it's Scotch bonnet, because they all have their, you know, they all have what you might call their active ingredients that has a healing part on the body, you know, but young people don't know this. And what we don't do is we don't educate them about it, about the benefits, you know, of these things. And I think, you know, once we start doing that, and as Ellie said, you know, you've got the older generation, you've got the allotments, you know, and they're kind of getting tired. And I think the younger generation, what we need to start doing is showing the younger generation how to start creating those pathways, to start creating allotments, you know, to look at places that are not so close to the main road, to start growing these things, you know. And I think if you put in, you know, going back to what Callum said, you know, that we're built in a world that's totally capitalistic, you know, the whole point is you start making your own season and then you start selling it. So you're educating, you're creating a legacy, and you're becoming richer. You know, I totally agree with Callum. You can't live in this society without being capitalistic. You know, it's difficult. You know, I want to run a community project, but I've realized, you know what? Without no return on investment, it ain't working. And that return on investment is the legacy.
Right.
Absolutely.
You know, it has to sustain itself. You know, community can't be community free. You know, it has to sustain itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that last point. Absolutely. We do have a comment from Sabrina Hassan. She says the intersections of race and sustainability is important to discuss from your perspectives, Nicholas and Callum. So if I say to you guys, to both of you, and we're talking about structures here, that is imperialism, colonialism, which has evolved now into capitalist structure that we're living in right now. And yes, I agree. If you are living in the Western world, you cannot separate 100%. You can try to from a capitalist structure. What does a world without racism look like?
We don't know. Yeah, you know, we can't even conceptualize a world without racism. You know, a world without racism is so far removed from our thinking. We don't even understand. We wouldn't even be able to conceptualize what that looks like. It would be totally flipped on its head, from, you know, the smallest thing that we believe to be true to the largest thing that we understand to be right. It would be flipped on its head. And for what Sabrina said in terms of the intersection of race, I absolutely agree with you. It's a very important discussion to have. But I also think that sometimes intersectionality in a race is a closed in-house discussion. I don't think it's necessarily a discussion that always has to be had outside. I think that's why things like Discussion Thursday exist. So we can come together and say, actually, across the board, why is it that we always look at those people like that when they're always black, when they're actually black as well? And we can say, actually, you know what? Let's put something together which challenges that idea that we have.
Couldn't put it better myself. I think for me, you know, I think what I found was that when I started, I thought there was no one there to actually help me. You know, nobody who really understood what I was trying to do. And I think what's happening now is that I'm finding more and more people who are now coming out. And, you know, it's actually making the job a lot more easy because it's not just the one voice. And I think you got to sit and think, you know, in the old days, you know, Marcus Garvey and everybody else, they didn't have social media, you know, and they were able to achieve quite a lot. And I think in this day and age, we've got social media, you know, it's easier to communicate with people, you know, you can do things quite quickly. And I think we need to really, really utilize that, you know, in this day and age. And I think that's something important that we kind of need to look at.
Do you think it's the reason maybe why people haven't been able to maybe galvanize as quickly or en masse back in Marcus Garvey's day, is because we are exposed to the media and are programmed from quite early on to believe a certain set of systems and structures, and it becomes quite difficult unless you actively go out and look for, you know, why is it this way? Why am I being treated in this manner? Sorry, just had a call come through. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. That's fine.
Yeah. Do you think the way that we've been conditioned, I guess, programmed, if you like, is making things difficult for us as a community to come together?
I think I've only got one point to say. I think for me, the last couple of years have been the biggest years of distraction. There's a lot of distraction that's happening, you know, and it stops you from doing stuff. You know, as much as we've got social media, you know, social media is also that distraction. Actually stops people doing stuff. You know, oh, do you know what? It's raining. I don't want to take my umbrella out. Let somebody else go and do the march, and I'll just watch it from the comfort of my own home. You know, whereas in the old days, you know, you had to go out. You had to stand and be counted, you know, and I think it's the whole story of I thought somebody else was going to do it, but nobody else did it, if that kind of makes sense. You know, we've all got to just chip in regardless of whatever's happening.
Yeah,
I don't know
absolutely.
if Ella have anything to say. I've got something to say, but maybe Ellie, you haven't spoken in a while. Maybe you could say, maybe you have a point before I go. I don't know. If not, it's fine.
Well, I would say solidarity is definitely a must. You know, united we stand, divided we fall. And I think if you're looking at tackling these issues, it is really about unity and bridging those gaps. And, you know, I'm a strong believer in not actually expecting my oppressor to liberate me. I'd like to educate and empower myself. And I think through doing that, you then become that example to others and show them that it can be done also. I've, after meeting you, Callum, have now become, although I've been involved in community initiatives and I've always done events and I'm behind a lot of, you know, I like to engage in political campaigns that are close to my heart. But I think only after having come to your discussion am I now realizing the importance of actually vocalizing what I'm doing. Because I thought, oh, actually, I'll let somebody else, like Nicola said, I would always get speakers to be my mouthpiece. But it's important for us who are doing this work and understand the barriers to actually speak about it and be honest about our experiences.
Absolutely. I mean, I was just gonna. Ella, you got anything to say? I had a point. I've got a very small point. Maybe I should just say it quickly. When Marcus Garvey was born, there were 2.4 billion people in the world. Now there's 8 billion. So that alone has a catastrophic effect that I don't think we always sort of recognize. It was very clear who the enemy was then because they were stamping on your head. Now they're making policies. So that's the only thing I just kind of wanted to just say.
Louise, they're still their knees on our necks still, my brother. They're still doing it.
Absolutely, of course.
I was just going to say before we move on like the solidarity front, I think that's been something that's been really important to realize within XR, that, you know, we can use these spaces and networks that we've built to work in solidarity with like people of color led movements for racial justice, and basically just say like we can do what you need us to do. Like we can be there and block a road if you want, we can do some promo if you want. If you don't want, that's fine. But like, you know, we've been doing stuff with the All Black Lives movement, which is like the youth led BLM group. They focus a lot on like LGBTQ plus issues as well as race issues. We supported the Stop the Mangamese protest in Brixton earlier this year. And yeah, I think just sort of as well as obviously doing our own internal work. Like there's a anti-oppression circle, which is a people of colour only space for people within XR to discuss every 2 weeks. And we've got the International Solidarity Network, which is kind of working directly with Indigenous people and people on the front line of climate change throughout the world. But as well as that, I think, just being like, we have these networks, we have a certain degree of like resources and capacity. What do you guys think we need to be doing, kind of thing? Like, if you guys have any tips or any like steers of like what you really think we need to be doing, that's definitely something we would want to hear.
Well, what I will say for the newcomers, we've got a few more followers now, listeners in. From what I see you guys do as Extinction Rebellion or XR Lewisham, you have quite a robust system in terms of teaching people who look like yourselves on what racism looks like, feels like. And, it's come out of the mouths of people who look like yourselves, that it's not the job of a Black person to explain what racism actually is. And then they go into, the reasons why that is the case. And I think that's really important because as part of the Black community, we often, feel, and we have plenty of, examples of it in the mainstream, or you walk out your street, or, and it doesn't have to be anything overt. It can be very small, insidious things that the understanding isn't quite there. One of the comments was the key to everything is education. The truth about Black people needs to be taught, our contributions to the world. Certainly that would be cemented in developing, higher levels of self-esteem. I know that your education, Callum, from Ubuntu you have an aura of, strong self-esteem and integrity. And I see people coming out of that school of thought with exactly the same. I don't know how you guys, how they do it. I need to go, talk to them, but there's something very positive there. And I think, this is the difference between, for example, mainstream education and, the school of thought. Has anyone got any comments on that? Anyone like to expand on that?
Sorry, I'm talking a lot. Maybe someone, Nicholas, I don't know, maybe someone else can go. I'm talking quite a lot.
Speak whenever you need to speak.
Sorry?
Okay, I can, just, it's really, really brief. I mean, if our contributions to the world were taught, the Western world would collapse. I mean, even sorry to go back to capitalism. Nigeria, you speak English in the school because of capitalism. Sort of aside from capitalism, the achievements of a lot of the Western world are off the back of Black people. So if they are taught, the Western world will totally collapse on its head, from religion to politics to everything that is understood to be true. And that's not an exaggeration. This is an absolute truth. I don't say it to sort of be disrespectful or anything like that. This is the truth of what it was. So yeah, I think we need to be the educators massively, and it can be taught in school, but it's never going to be taught to a capacity that sort of disseminates the system which is teaching them. That's just never going to happen. If you was in power, would you do that to yourself? Say, Nicholas,
absolutely.
Do you know what? I just thinking about the comment that Prophet said. I think for me, it's about how we teach our own children about the contributions to the world. And I think, as Callum said, nobody's going to teach it better than we can teach ourselves, and we have to teach our children. We can't be expecting our children to go to school. I think regardless of whatever the curriculum is, we have to teach ourselves, whether it's through Saturday school, home school learning. I think that's the only way. And I think even for me, in terms of what I do, when I see young people come, young Black boys especially, I think it's always about teaching them that, they can always be the best that they can be. The only difference is you just got to work hard at it. you know. And I think, you know, that for me, that's what I like to, you know, kind of indoctrinate into young people, because I think we live in a different country, you know, and we've got to understand that we've got to navigate through all of the various different channels. You know, if we go somewhere else, it's the same thing. So, you know, I think it's, you know, it's only us that can teach our own young people about our pride, who we are, where we come from, you know, and what we're actually able to achieve. You know, it's funny because, you know, in terms of what I do in terms of community, you know, I actually worked in the pharmaceutical industry, you know, and I also try and teach people that, you know what, you know, whether it's fixing bikes, doing T-shirts, whatever it is, I've taught myself, you know, and that's what we've got to kind of teach our young people, you know, that they should believe in themselves. And I think, you know what, that will inspire their confidence. You know, like I said earlier, you know, I've got a project of which I've never done anything like that before. And I think it's really about, how do I show other young people that live in my community that anything is possible? And if you don't teach them, they're not going to do it. If they don't see anybody that looks like them doing it, they're not going to do it. And I think we need more people coming out, you know, showing that it is possible, because I think sometimes, you know, our young ones don't really see much happening. So they don't really have a lot to look forward to. But at the worst, you know, in the worst case, sometimes it's right in front of them. It's just that they don't see it.
Yes, and I think also that our education actually is not part of mainstream. You know, you can't just switch on the TV and see. I mean, you see more now. Certainly when I was younger, I don't know about you guys, but maybe I'm showing my age here. When I would come home from school and I'd watch the likes of The Bill or EastEnders, and the only black people that would be featured on those programs were criminals and, you know, some negative stereotype. And I grew up with that. And I had actually realized that that was having quite a negative effect on my psyche, until I found more people who I could, you know, actually share and speak about things that had been kind of internalized over the decades. So I think my next question actually is, do you ever see, maybe not in our lifetime, our history being part of mainstream education, mainstream media?
Do we see it as being mainstream media? Is that what you said?
Say that again.
Did you say, would we see it as being mainstream media? Is that what you said?
Will our history ever be part of mainstream education and mainstream media? Maybe not in our lifetime. Do you ever see that to be a reality?
No.
Difficult question, isn't it?
It is difficult because
yes.
The thing is, I think our history is already in mainstream media. I think the problem is I think sometimes we just choose when to highlight it, you know, when it's Black History Month, you know, and then we forget it for the rest of the year. And I think, you know, we should shout about it all day, every day, you know. I think for me, you know, I live in Peckham, you know, I don't even hide it. And, you know, we've got a great hero, you know, Harold Moody, which, you know, and I always tell people, you know, most people don't even know where Harold Moody Park is. So the thing is, if you don't know where Harold Moody Park is, how can you tell your children about Harold Moody? How can you go to the school and say, you need to educate my child? You know, and I think that's something that's important. You know, we need to make, you know, our heroes and our sheroes part of mainstream, part of everyday life. You know, the inventions, you know, all the different things around the world, you know, dry cleaning, you know, the train coupling system, you know, nobody's telling anybody about those things. So if we're not telling our young people, who's going to do it?
Yeah. And we have a comment here.
Ellie, you said yes.
Yeah, I really need to.
Go ahead, sorry.
So from the time when you asked the question, I mean, I definitely agree. Yes, it's about education, and definitely we have a responsibility to educate ourselves, our children, and I think education starts at home primarily, actually, and we should not be expecting the state or society to educate ourselves and our children and our family with our own belief system. But moving on from that, I think that in regards to our culture and our history coming out into mainstream, whether it be through the education or media, I think that it's happening. It is already happening. I've got an older sister who is dedicated to pushing diversity in the British television and film industry. And I know that there's been something on BBC with Lenny Henry, who's leading Windrush. So compared to, like we said, when we were younger, and there was a lot of negative stereotypes being portrayed on our television, there is a lot of positive people on our television who are now being represented. It's nowhere near enough, but it's quantifiably enough. Like, we can actually see that it's increased between when we were kids and now. So I think if there's been a little bit of progress between now and then there's going to continue to be progress. And we have to be the instruments of change that we want to see.
Amen. I heard that last sentence loud and clear, but everything else was a little bit.
No.
But amen to that.
No, I heard it clear. I heard it loud and clear. So I'm not sure.
I'm sure everybody else did. But yes, guys. I mean, filter in. What can you say on top of that? Because I didn't hear everything.
I mean, Malcolm X said that. So this is Malcolm X's words. So he said the white man will fool us with token victories, and I think by a large amount that's what's happening right now. There's a lot of token victories, but nothing substantial. And it doesn't mean that we haven't made a difference, because we absolutely have. You've got our children wanting to be African. They want to talk about their heritage and they want to talk about their history, which is a massive step from when I was growing up. I'm not even 30. I'm almost 30. So that's a massive step in itself. But in terms of sort of the mainstream, it's hard. I really think that a lot of it is a lot of token victories as opposed to substantial, significant change. A lot of the time we Americanize history. So I think things like end SARS, that's been the big hashtag at the moment, has been a stark reality and a wake up to a lot of us of how big racism is. I mean, it may look like it's black on black people, but this is off the back end of a war that was engineered by the British. So even that in of itself, the country in and of itself is has a colonial background, same as Jamaica. I'm from Jamaica, exact same thing. So there's a pride and heritage in us, but there's also a little bit of of a bitter kind of resentment and a bitter aftertaste when we talk about it.
And this is why I said before, we cannot expect our oppressor to liberate us. So yes, I believe that our Black history, the foundation of who we are, should be in mainstream education. However, until then, we have a responsibility to educate ourselves, and we, like Nicholas said, have a responsibility to engage with our community initiatives that are existing, collaborate, join forces together, share resources, and I can't stop saying be the instrument of change, because
absolutely.
I myself currently sit on a board called the Burgess Park Food Project. It is predominantly white middle class. However, they have opened their arms to me and repeatedly asked me not only to engage, but how I want to engage. So that's now a door that's open for me to now bring Nicholas from the Livesey Project, a load of young people into that garden who are African and Caribbean descent, so that they have access to something that they possibly didn't even know existed, but because they trust and know Nicholas, they will come. So I think it's about us joining forces, and I just really am a strong believer in being an instrument of change, because we sit in positions where we can influence and educate people. You're doing it now, Callum, with your group. You're doing it now, Val, with this platform. Nicholas, you've been doing this. Ella, pleased to meet you, and I'm coming to your thing in Lewisham. But it absolutely is happening, and I think we need to focus on what's happening rather than focusing on what's not happening.
Yes, and you've made some really strong and valid points there. I am also aware that, you know, people who are doing their things are also being pulled by strings that aren't their own. Nicholas, do you want to comment on that? Sorry to dump you in the deep end there.
It's funny because, you know, I'm Nigerian, and I think, you know, I also grew up in Nigeria as well. And I think the issue is, you know, I remember the days of Fela Kuti. You know, we had Fela Kuti talking about the injustices, and, you know, it's something that's been spoken about. And I think, you know, when you spoke about Nigeria, it's funny because Nigeria is the way it is because of because of the imposition that the British government has put on it, which is what we're going through now. You know, and I think for me, when I see the SARS argument, for me it's kind of good because, you know, young people are now looking and saying, guess what? This is our lives, you know, that the government's messing with, and we've got to do something about it. You know, look at the Black Lives, you know, the Black Lives situation, and I think young people are standing up. But sometimes I think I have this hesitation where it's like, who's really pulling the strings? You know, what's the real cause behind it? Because the question is, where are we going to be tomorrow? Where are we going to be next year? Is there going to be a difference that's actually made? And the only way that we can actually see a difference is when we start seeing the legacy of the efforts in our young children. That's the only way we're going to see, you know, young people going to school, you know, where we don't have so many young black boys being stopped, you know, just for walking on the street. You know, it's funny because, you know, we moan about stop and search, but it hasn't exactly changed, has it? We've had the McPherson report. We've had every single report available. But you know what? Young people will still tell you they're still going through the same thing. So the question is, until those things
that's
change,
one of my...
you know what?
Go on.
It doesn't really make a difference in terms of what's really going on. And I think, you know, only young people are going to be able to turn around, you know, people like yourself, Callum, who will turn around and say, guess what? Things have actually changed. You know, has it really, has it really changed from the days when I was growing up? You know, I remember 1985 riots, you know, when I lived in Brixton, you know, to, you know, 2011 riots. Is it 2011?
Yeah.
I think so anyway.
10, 11,
yeah, I think it was about 2011. Yeah. The question is, it's the same issue.
Yeah. Same issue, different decade, called something else.
Yeah.
But that is one of my concerns as a female, I guess, is that we're in a time now where there is this global consciousness across the globe. People are understanding that, okay, we are waking up to the fact that black and brown people across the globe are not treated equally or fairly or in a justified manner. My concern is that this is just a fad, that this is just a fashion, that this in the next, you know, 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years, it will disappear and we're back to where we kind of started.
Fashion influences change.
Yeah.
You know, fashion. I mean, you being in the fashion industry, you know that. You know, I totally agree with you. I don't disagree with you at all. I agree. But I also think that, you know, a little sugar sweetens the taste. And as much as, you know, there's a lot of ingenuous organizations or people, whatever it may be, there's an equally amount of genuine people who have realized, wow, like this is going on, I'm jumping on it. Do you know what I mean? And when this fashion dies out, there will still be so many people who were introduced to it through that fashion and continue to work. Do you know what I mean? Yes. So I totally agree with you, but I also think there's a positive kind of offset to that.
outlook.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's about what do we do during this period of time now to create that legacy, as Nicholas had mentioned before. You know, what is our legacy? So Ella, I'm going to come back to you, having sort of come sort of full circle with our conversations on this topic. And, you know, I do understand that Extinction Rebellion have come to understand that they cannot fight climate change without first dismantling systemic racism. I mean, how do you guys kind of see the future, if you like, for new structures or new systems? How does, it's a big question, I know.
It is a really big question, and I'm not totally sure that I can answer it, to be honest. I suppose if we're talking on like a really high level, obviously we need a low carbon transition, but like that in itself it's not going to answer any of the problems, any of the systemic inequalities, and I guess the fundamental idea that some lives matter more than others, which is what has made the climate crisis happen in itself. I don't know how we go about tackling it, but I guess from the point of XR, from the point of view of XR, I would say protest and organising and having these conversations, making sure they don't drop off the agenda, doing solidarity work. I think that's all we can really do at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, climate action is a very important, you know, topic, you know, where we are drawing parallels between climate action and systemic racism. And I think, you know, as I mentioned before, I do hail you guys. I think you guys, what you're doing is just like mind-blowingly good. The way that you guys galvanize each other, you come together as a really strong community of people to, you know, carry out your activist, you know, activities and this kind of things is out of this world. And you're doing it for the right reasons. You know, I'm fully 100% behind you guys, without a doubt. Viewers, I can see a few more comments coming through. Please do keep your comments coming through, and we can read these out as we're going through this discussion. Has anyone got any other comments to make?
I was going to say, obviously I'm a community activist, but I'm also a mother of two. I've got a 13-year-old boy, soon to be 14, who is obviously in the mainstream education system, even secondary school in year 9, and I've got a daughter in her second year of university. But what I would like to say, it was kind of bringing it back to a point that was raised earlier about have things changed. So my son is currently having to undergo navigating himself through the academic institute that he currently attends, and there is a lot of systemic racism present in the institute that he attends, and it kind of trickles down from hierarchy into the mentality of the student. And I think Nicholas mentioned earlier, it's about empowering. It's always about education, but empowering and installing self-belief in an individual can actually inspire that individual to move mountains. So if you're doing that with young people who are already being, I don't know, stereotyped or racially profiled within a smaller section of a wider society, then it becomes very difficult to tackle it from outside, because as a parent, my child is in that institute and I'm not there to witness what he's going through. So obviously I can only support him as an external person from that institute. But having been part of Callum's discussion group, I've now met a wonderful young man who's also 14, Josh, Don't know if you'd like to tell the viewers a little bit about him, Callum, but he's educating me on how to navigate my son, being a young black boy himself in the education system, having educated himself on local government initiatives, education policies. Can you believe this young man is teaching me and empowering my son how to deal with the racial institutional oppression that my son's currently undergoing? I don't know if you want to add to that, Karen, but I'm just trying to say that it's about us installing that self-belief and kind of connecting with the people that really do want to administer change.
Oh, I mean, Josh is amazing. I don't even know if I'm qualified to explain how amazing Josh is, but you know, he's an amazing young person, and no doubt over the next 10 years, you'll hear about Josh. So that's all I'm gonna say about Josh. In terms of the school system, I work in education, and I pretty much always have. So I work with the schools in and around Lewisham, and yeah, I mean, you know, I think you said it perfectly. It's extremely racist. I say to not young people, I say to parents all the time, when you're looking at schools to go for your children to go to, don't just look at, you know, their grades or whatever. Look at how inclusive they are. Because you've got some schools, I'm not going to sort of call any out as much as I would love to, who are in some of the most impoverished areas in the whole of Britain, and you deal with some of the highest crime rate in the whole of Britain, and they're excluding children for cussing one another. Do you see what I'm saying? They don't care about the other issues that are going on. A lot of them, not all of them, but you know, I see this. I sit in those meetings and sort of see what happens. And there's an immense amount of racism in the schooling system and social care. It's very unfortunate. How can we tackle it? I think, you know, get on those boards. You know, sit in those rooms where decisions are made. Get together with other parents, join an organization which aligns with the things you believe in, and challenge them. You know, professionally challenge when decisions are made. You have to be in a room when decisions are made, or you have to be in some way, shape, or form lobbying those decisions and pushing them forward. And if you're doing that, you know, we're able to impact change. You know, but what happens is you have a lot of people who feel like it's an isolated incident. And it's really not, you know, it's extremely common.
But you can feel like that as a parent, because you can feel like that as a parent, because I know I definitely felt somewhat overwhelmed in having to tackle the education system, having to read education policies, having to understand how I can safeguard my child from somebody that's supposed to be safeguarding him. So I definitely would not have had the confidence to pursue the path I am without having a young person like Josh, who has taken the time to educate himself because he was also a victim of the same injustice. Callum. Should we just carry on? Can you hear us?
I'm back.
Sorry,
yeah,
my
I have no
connection's
clue what happened
really
there.
bad for some reason.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there. So I missed most of what you just said, Ellie. Sorry.
I was pretty much saying that having Josh in my corner has given me confidence to tackle this issue within education. And I think the more we have support to educate ourselves, and the more we connect with each other, like with yourself, with Nicholas, it just kind of empowers us so we can, as parents, empower our children as well.
Of course.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Sorry, my connection is really bad, so I'm not picking up what everyone is saying. So do, you know, continue the conversation without me interjecting. But I am actually going to read out a comment by Stephanie. Climate change won't change.
I'll read it then, because I think Val's gone. Climate change won't change racial issues. Those climate change fanatics will only use as a Trojan horse. I use best. Is it Ellie? Ella? Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I suppose I can definitely see why some people kind of think of the two issues as separate and then think they should be tackled separately. But I think it's like we were saying, like it all comes down to colonialism and capitalism and the exploitation of people and land and the idea that some lives are more important than others. I mean, if you look at like just in London, for example, like looking at air pollution, for example, it's an environmental issue that affects everyone, but it affects some people worse than others because the places where the bad roads are and where the incinerators are going to be in the poorer areas because the people that live there are cared about less by people in government. Like in Edmonton in North London, they've already got illegal levels of air pollution. It's one of the poorest areas. I think more than 65% of residents, I think it is, are from Black and minority ethnic backgrounds. It's already got illegal levels of air pollution. The incinerator is being expanded to be the largest one in Europe. So it's just going to get worse. And at the same time, you had the government this year saying, no, we don't want an incinerator in Cambridgeshire because it's not in keeping with the local neighbourhood. So it's like, at what point, like what makes a local neighbourhood like the kind of neighbourhood that you want an incinerator in? What kind of people need to live there? What kind of buildings need to be there? Yes, I can see that the two issues can seem separate in a lot of senses, but it's all about power and who is going to be affected, who is going to bear the brunt of like air pollution and the health effects like asthma, lung cancer, deaths even. There's like, I think it's 26 premature deaths from air pollution in the capital every day. And they are not predominantly white and middle class people who are dying, to be frank. So I think, you know, I really do understand the sentiment behind the comment, but I think it's all interlinked and it's all part of the same fight.
Nicholas, I hear you mumbling. Go on.
What? No. Do you know what? I'm just kind of looking at the question, and I'm kind of looking at it in two ways, because I think, you know, I'm kind of old enough to remember when climate change wasn't even on the radar, you know, and to see where it is now. And I think, you know, this is my point about legacy. You know, you guys you've created a movement, and it's got to the top of the government agenda. So I think it would be good if you can teach, you know, many of the groups, you know, how to do what they're doing to get to the same place. And I think, you know, when we look at what's happening in today's environment, you know, it's unfortunate to say, but you know, everybody always wants to help the Black organization, but doesn't want to give the Black organization the tools to do what needs to be done. You know, and I think, you know, going back to the previous question, until that happens, you know, we're not really going to have a fair world, because it's almost like somebody has to be the teacher and somebody has to be the student. You know.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, yeah, Nicholas, I think you said it so perfectly. Yeah, I think you said it so perfectly. I think there's a kind of a what it is. I think most people would agree, unless there's something wrong with them, that the environment is extremely important. It feels bittersweet when other fights are recognized before ours. So you may see a lot of people who look like me say stuff like, that ain't anti-Semitism, they're not even Semites. Oh, but he didn't say anything against Jewish people. And what it is I feel like the Jewish people are in a position where, you know, we say they're sensitive, but I don't think it's sensitive. I think it's exactly how we should be. We shouldn't allow anybody to say anything even remotely close to an offense, which could be an offense to us. I think we should be exactly the same. Yeah. And I think that's why a lot of the time you might see fights which are very legitimate be a little bit sidelined by Black people, because our fight has never been recognized. And I think that's really where it is. Climate change, I think that they're definitely intertwined. But being a Black person, obviously, we are going to see our fight as the most important. But you know, even me, I like Extinction Rebellion, man. Them guys are gangsters. they just lock off the road, man. They're gangsters, man. I like it, man. I'm with it still. But yeah, I think that's where it comes from a lot, man.
You know.
And I want to bring the conversation back to community projects. So how have you found, as I think I mentioned earlier, that I see a lot more BAME. There's issues with the acronym as well, to label us. Funding for our community, but we're also seeing a lot of other culturally led organisations stepping in with the face and being able to access these funding opportunities. I mean, Nicholas, because you're so much further ahead than us in this community world, how have you found that dynamic?
I'm still in the same shoes.
Say again?
I'm still in the same shoes. It doesn't matter. You know what? It's difficult because, you know, it's a minefield. You got to know where you're stepping, what you're doing, and there's, I don't even know how to even put it. It's like an old boys network. You know, you work with somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, if that kind of makes sense. And that's how you get through life. And I think for me, it's, you know, going back to, you know, the statement that I made earlier, you know, about Extinction Rebellion, teach us, you know, how you've got to where you've got to. Nobody's actually teaching us. One of the biggest issues, and anybody who knows me, is that I've got an issue because nobody's teaching capacity. You know, people are quite quick to give certain organizations, certain individuals money, but they won't teach them. In short, I always say, you know, don't give me the fish, give me the fishing rod. You know, and that's what we need. We need the fishing rod. We don't need the fish. You can eat for a day, but if you've got a fishing rod, you can eat for a year. And as Callum said earlier, you know, you can't get rid of capitalism because somebody wants to sell you the fish. They don't want you to catch the fish. And for me, even, you know, when it comes to community development, you know, I have a big issue with it. You know, sometimes, you know, I kind of keep quiet on, you know, on that situation, you know, and I think, as you know, Valerie, we set up a forum, you know, to look at addressing capacity and sustainability, because that's the one thing nobody wants to teach us. You know, I know another organization that set up a similar organization to myself and doesn't want to get them constituted. Why not? If you're not constituted, you can't generate money.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're going around saying you're supporting black people, and you're even putting black people at the head of these organizations. You know, but they don't really have say because, you know, you're kind of pulling the string in terms of what you want and what you don't want them to do. You know, and I think that's just the sad thing. And I think, you know, going back to what we've said, and I think a lot of things are intertwined. We've got to educate ourselves. You know, I'm doing what I'm doing, and I'm meeting people who are in position to do things, and I'm thinking, hold on, where have you been all my life?
Yeah.
You know, some people have been there, but, you know, I'm bumping into, you know, some people say, oh, I've never heard of you, but yeah, I know you have. But that's life. You know, sometimes we've just got to go on and just keep doing what we're doing. And the fact is, you know, if everybody do, you know, Callum, Ellie, you know, Ella, Valerie, you're all younger than me. I know that for sure. You know, the world is never going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. So, you know, the question is, you just have to keep going, because, you know, don't get me wrong. And I'll make this admission. You know, sometimes I wake up in the morning, I just want to give up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but then I walk onto the street and I see a young person, and I just sit and think, only God knows the journey that he's going to go on, and that's just the one thing that stops me from giving up.
Absolutely. That's very, very brave of you to say that, man. And you know,
no, I'll tell you. Sometimes I just sit and think, why the hell am I doing this?
Likewise, no, absolutely.
Yeah. And what makes it worse is when you have to be diplomatic about it.
Yeah.
You know what?
So you've got You've got hurdles from authority. You've got hurdles from authority level. There are issues within. Yes, there are issues within our community to enable galvanization of our people to really understand, what it is that you're trying to put together. And then I understand.
It's not just about what I'm putting together. Ellie's here. Callum's here. You're here. Ella's here. The thing is, we're all going to the same place. We're just using different lanes.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah,
the destination is the same.
It's the same. I look at young people and I'm like, do you know what? I don't want you to live in the world that I've lived in because it's been difficult. And I'm tenacious. I don't give up. And it's quite easy, especially if you've lived in a deprived area, and it's funny because, I was kind of trying to really look at the link between climate change and racism. Now, the question is, if you live in an area that's highly polluted, you're more likely to have asthma, or any kind of atopic disease, which stops you from doing things. You're more likely to have eczema, and things like that can stop you from doing what you want to do. No matter, it doesn't matter how small it is. Effect. Yeah, it has a knock-on effect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the thing is, we can't sit and say that it's not it is, but as Callum said, we're always going to see it from a different perspective.
Yeah. And can I just add that even before coming to this panel, I had looked at Extinction Rebellion as a white entity that was capitalizing off our issues that we've been living, and it's only having met yourself, listen to what you said as an individual, and quite frankly coming to get involved and seeing with my own two eyes that you lot are actually doing what you say you're going to do, that's now going to change.
We've lost Ellie.
Did you see me? I was listening so intently as well.
She should be back on.
We do have a comment. Community development by Billy, thank you. Community development that local councils push has never been about empowerment and sustainability, but control and dependency.
Absolutely.
Totally agree.
Even
totally
100%.
This is a real, what's the word? Not conundrum. Is that the word? There's been a
conundrum.
There's been a real what's the word? Something goes. I've got opposing views against this, but they oppose against each other. I can't remember the name. I've been in this too long. My mind's buzzing now. About with the roads that they've started locking off and putting the bike lanes or whatever.
Yeah.
It's very work. It's extremely draconian and authoritarian what they've done. They didn't consult with anybody, and I agree. I don't think it's anything to do with empowerment. I don't think it's anything to do with a better world. I think someone got in power who likes bikes and said, you know what, I want some bike lanes. I don't think that the people, like I said, it goes back to the beginning conversation, capitalism. This isn't about making a better world for the next generation. This is about me getting the most that I can get, because that's what capitalism is. And I totally agree. It's never about when we look at let's say Britain invades another country. It's never about bettering that country, or it's never a foreign sense of compassion for the people. It has never been that. There's always an underlying monetary agenda. And as long as we understand that and capitalism, we're all right, man. I agree with what you said.
Systemic racism is built on the economic need for power. That's what systemic racism is built on. But I am very aware of the time. We have 6 minutes. I don't know if what have we got here? James Ross Hunter, youth support. Thank you for your comment. Follow the money and see who benefits most. Natalie says you wake up and everything is done. It's control power, and I think she was pertaining to what you were saying, Callum, about overnight they changed the roads and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Any last comments? I mean, we're talking a lot on the issues of what we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis and how it's actually affecting our young people, whether it's access to education, whether it's access in healthcare, and accessing better well-being. We are not an island to ourselves as much as, you know, Great British Empire would like us to believe. We are part of a global family, one race of humans, which is
Species.
the human race. Species, absolutely. And I put it forward to you all at the beginning. What does a world without racism look like? What does a world with equality and sustainable practices look like? I can see you, Nicholas, laughing, but if we can just maybe wrap up with 1 or 2 sentences on what does this better world look like?
Follow Discussion Thursday on Instagram.
I like it. I like it. I'm going to bring my faith into this.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay.
I am going to quickly bring my faith into this. I am a born again, and we believe in, you know, a God's power. Okay. There are some people within us, within our communities, that are followers of Christ still. The original church was created in Ethiopia. Unfortunately, Europeans have plagiarized the Bible, and for me, it's heartbreaking to see, especially young Black people, moving away from our Maker. That's how I see it. What I believe is being created here in this room, in this panel discussion, is an example of God's world being created. That is a world of equality, a world of love, and a world of compassion and understanding. And, you know, we want to create a transparent and open discussion around these issues. Hopefully we can do this again at some point, maybe once a month. But that was my interjection. Has anyone got any positive thoughts on maybe what this new world looks like?
So everyone should have something growing in their house, some type of food or vegetable.
Lovely answer. Growing. That's a beautiful answer. That was a beautiful one. I agree with that.
Sorry, say that again, Ellie. It's a shame I didn't hear it.
Should be encouraged to grow a fruit, a vegetable, or a herb, or several, and that is an individual's contribution to tackling eco-sustainability, as well as even, like Nicholas said, you know, products can be made of those things and then turned into a way to capitalize the product. So Scotch bonnet could turn into hot pepper sauce.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah, like it.
So for me, the Nation of Islam put in a 10-point plan, and for us, we just follow that plan or some form of a plan that would be our point of reference to follow. And I can't talk of a world without racism. It's hard to conceptualize, but the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, if we have a knowledge of self, that's sufficient to alleviate ourselves from the oppressive state we're in. And that's kind of all I could say.
Yeah. I did a bit of work with Nation of Islam as well. Very, very nice people. Fundamentally, foundationally, you know, solid folks.
Yeah, we're good people, man.
Yeah, definitely. Ella, have you got any final words before we leave?
I just want to say thank you to everyone, really. I don't know if I can describe my vision of the world. I think I'm a bit too skeptical to do that, so I won't subject you to that. But yeah, just thanks.
I'm an eternal optimist.
yeah, I'll defer to your position on that one. But yeah, thanks. Nicholas? Thank you, everyone.
Do you know what? I really don't know. I don't know what a world would look like, you know, without racism. It's kind of really, really hard to fathom, because I think it doesn't matter what it does to me. It doesn't. I'm trying to be positive. It doesn't matter where you go. There's always going to be racism in one shape or the other.
It's always there, yeah.
You know, and there's always going to be somebody who feels that they're slightly more superior than you, and that's just the problem. You know, I was kind of just thinking back to when I was young, when I grew up in Nigeria, when I thought I lived in utopia, actually. You know, until I got a bit older, and somebody said, "Oh, you know, your people come from this and our people come from this, so you're not really real." And I think for me, that makes me sit and think, wow, you know, there's this difference between everybody. And the question is, it doesn't matter. We're all the same people, but, you know, people always, I don't know. I think the only way, if a world existed without racism, I think, you know, for those of you who are old enough, it'll be like watching 1999 with Martin Landau. Everybody flying in spaceships, you know. Yeah? That's it. That's what it would look like, you know.
Electric spaceships, man.
Sorry?
Yeah,
electric spaceships, man.
Is it?
Anyway, yeah.
But they were electric.
And sustainable ones. That's yeah. I'm serious.
Awesome. Well, on that positive note, I think it is time that we said our goodbyes.
No,
thank you all for joining. It's been amazing. I absolutely love you guys as a group of people who are contributing to a better way of doing things and illustrating a better way of trading and educating and all this kind of stuff. And it's inspiring just listening to you all. So I really hope the listeners have also been inspired. If you want to get in touch with any of these panelists, you can follow CocoCollective_org, where you will see more details of these panelists, and stay in touch there for another panel discussion, hopefully in 4 weeks' time. I'm very aware, we are all very aware that another lockdown has just begun. So I hope you will stay safe, stay blessed, and thanks very much for joining us.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks, guys. Take care.